Welcome to the Sales SOS podcast, where we answer your sales distress calls. I'm your host, Liz Heiman, bringing the rescue boat to your sales challenges. In this ever-changing sales environment, it's easy for leaders to feel adrift. We're here to be the beacon guiding you to success. Each episode, I'm joined by top sales experts and practitioners who have navigated this waters and come out victorious. Together, we'll uncover the insights and strategies that will help you hit your sales targets and grow your business. So if you're ready to turn your sales distress into sales success, you're in the right place. Let's dive into today's topic. Hi, I'm Liz Heiman, and this is your Sales SOS podcast. I'm here with Mike Simmons today, and it's just the two of us. The rest of your Sales SOS crew is on vacation because it's July. So Mike and I have been talking about sales process, and if you've missed the other two, go back and listen. We've had two podcasts so far talking about process. Mike and I love to debate and discuss sales process. Right now, we're going to we've talked about what is the sales process, and we've talked about what are the stages. And we're going to talk about what happens in those stages. Like what should be happening in there? What are the rules? What are the activities? How do we make this usable instead of it just being, something very esoteric? How do we make it a concrete, usable tool? So that's what we're going to talk about now. We've talked about mistakes, but I know that as we're doing this, we're going to highlight some more mistakes that companies and people make when they're working through the sales process. So when I think about, let me just clarify a little bit more. When I think about this and I think about the different stages, I kind of go through this process, and I actually have a tool. If anyone wants it, you can send me a LinkedIn and I'll send it to you. It's my sales process tool. And what I do is I say, okay, let's list the stages. Then on the left-hand side, we're going to list the stages and we're going to define the stages. So if my stage is prospect, my definition is finding opportunities for new business. Okay. And then I'm going to have what I call a gate or a rule. The gate that moves you from prospecting to qualifying. What's the rule? You have to have them agree to have a conversation about that opportunity. So maybe it stays in prospecting until you can actually talk about something specific. So I have a stage, I have a definition, I have a rule, a gate that moves it from one stage to the next. And then in the next column, I have activities. What are the activities that should be happening in the stage? If I'm prospecting, what should I be doing? If I'm qualifying, what should I be doing? And then I have another column that's called questions. There are different questions that need to be asked during the different stages. And the same questions may come up over and over again as what my dad would call confirmation questions. Is that still the date you intend to sign off? Or is that still the date that you're going to build this? Is that still your go live date? Is there anybody else who's going to be involved in this sales process? Some of them come up over and over and over again. And by listing them, it helps sales reps remember that they happen more than once. And then my last column is what I call content or tools. What does the salesperson need to be successful in each one of these stages? And when I'm working with companies, it's often interesting how many of those critical pieces are missing. They've just assumed the salesperson is fine. So the salesperson either makes stuff up or jerry-rigs a solution or whatever. And those can include things like, I need the CRM at this point. I need a tool for creating a proposal. I need a signing tool. I need a timeline. I need a list of definitions. Like, what are the things that the buyer and the seller need in order to make this transaction or this process happen? So that's what I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about, well, what should be happening in each of these stages? So, Mike, does that give you a launching spot for, you want to talk about the different stages and what activities should be happening, or what's going on in your brain after I said all of that?
I think it's awesome. And I mean, that's the thing. If you can't answer those questions, then you're not enabling or empowering your team to be effective in the way that they work through the stages of the sales process. And you make it very hard for that stage to do the job that it was intended to do. And I love how you highlighted the importance of naming, defining, having a criteria, exit criteria, some kind of a thing, a gate, something that gets them out of that gate, rules, the specific questions, the specific activities, and then that layer, that foundational layer that I think a lot of us miss on, which is communication and tools. How do we help people? What kind of tools do we make available for people to be successful in each of those stages? Because what ends up happening, and we've seen this all over the place, or at least I've seen this all over the place, and I don't know if it happens as much anymore, but have you ever gotten into a situation where you've ever sent a proposal to someone and you inadvertently left another company's name in it?
Yes, I have done that.
We all have. And we go through and we do the whole find replace, and we go and we try to get all of them out of there, and then we don't proofread it. And have you ever had one of those situations where someone on a team creates an amazing proposal that's winning all this business, and then there are a couple of typos in the bullet points that are included in that proposal, and that typo now has just been used at scale across an organization. And even though the customer didn't notice it and we didn't notice it, it's still not a good look for us as a business. We laugh because these things happen, and they will continue to happen. And one of the ways that one of the control pieces that you can put in, one of the things that you can use to help is get your marketing team involved in customer communication throughout each of these stages. This is what they do.
Marketing always says, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, so I just do top of the funnel. Well, here's your list of what you need to do. Here it is. And those mistakes, one of my clients just, one of their salespeople put US dollars instead of Canadian dollars or Oops.
Yeah.
Right. These things happen. So how does the organization support the salespeople so that they're not making these kinds of mistakes? What kinds of tools, what kind of checks need to be in place to support them? And I want to back up though, just for a second though, because I think these questions should be asked during each of these stages, or these activities should happen, I think demo should happen in the qualify stage, or whatever it is that's in my head that should happen. And the client says, well, yes, we want to do this, blah, 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 but I'm not the one that's going to demo it. Let's get through the process. We need to get a proposal and do a whole bunch more before anybody's willing to look at a demo.
Yeah.
So then we don't hold up the entire sales process and force them to keep it in qualify, and we won't write a proposal until they've done the demo. No. Sometimes we have to loosen up our rules a little bit because the client needs things done differently. So don't make your CRM and your sales process so rigid that you force salespeople to either make stuff up or leave stuff in the wrong stage or whatever. You really want to support them to keep things moving forward.
Yeah, and there's the way that I like to describe this, or I think the kind of I don't know if this is a metaphor or an analogy, and this just hammers me in my lack of command of the English language, but it's we're not baking.
Right.
It doesn't have to be measured perfectly and put in at a certain time and delivered this way. We're cooking. We've got some creativity and some flexibility, and we can add a little bit of flair as we go through this. We're cooking, we're not baking. If you're asking your team to bake and you have a bunch of cooks, you're going to be in trouble. And so you can create some flexibility in the way that you work with your team. The other thing I think you've got to do and be really careful about is, especially if you bring on like an enablement person to help you inside your organization, they get so excited about all of this stuff and they just want to put more in, and they just want to put more in, and they just want to put more in. And the more you add, the greater the complexity. Simplify, reduce, start eliminating as much as you can in each of those things, each of the tools that you have available, and you will help to reduce friction in the buying process for the customer and in the sales process for your reps. So don't just add it in because it's really easy to add digital things in there, and there's an open container that can be huge. Think about it in this context. When I'm looking at those cards that have all those lists of questions that Liz was talking about and the activities, What happens if it could only fit on an index card for each of those stages?
Right. And mine has to fit in a box, right? There's a box. It has to fit in a box. You can't take up pages. And because the salespeople can't do it. And what happens is we start creating processes that force our salespeople to act unnaturally.
Yeah.
So when I say salespeople, there's not this thing called a natural salesperson. There is natural engagement behavior. And we've all been in a meeting where a salesperson asked us question after question after question. And even though we answered it kind of in a different way, like I have to ask every one of these questions. And as a buyer, I really don't care what you have to do. It has nothing to do with me. I answered all of that in my opening discussion when I told you what I wanted. Every single thing you've asked me has been there. You know, if you want to verify details about it, great. But don't drag me kicking and screaming through your process. Don't
read your CRM. Look at the records. Like, listen to the call.
Yeah, and listen to the person that you're talking to. So when you tell your salesperson, they have to check off the answers to each one of these things and prove that they asked it to the customer. Stop that kind of nonsense. Stop with this. This is the script. You must say exactly this. And when they do this, you have to say this. And that is not what Mike and I are talking about, because that is nonsense.
Well, and when you do it, what will end up happening, and Liz has talked about this a couple of different times, it's come up as a mistake that ends up happening in part of this process, is we as leaders or some enablement professional or RevOps person who hasn't carried a bag comes out there, sold, carried a quota, comes in there and says, we need to add that into the CRM. We need to add that in the CRM. We need to add that in the CRM. And you know what? We're going to make that a required field. Now, all of a sudden, you're limiting people's ability to get things moving forward. So now, okay, it's a required field. I don't have the information.
I'll make something up.
I'll guess.
Salespeople are really great at making stuff up.
Really, really, really amazing at making stuff up. I mean, they can, and the one that I love, Liz talked about, importance of next step in some of the stages. And that's a really important field for me. It's a really important field for me because I can see, and I forget if we can curse and swear on this, so I won't, but I can see bull crap behavior in a CRM when every one of the deals next step look the same. Like,
follow up. Let's talk about that in a minute. Let's talk about this. When we go to CRM, let's talk about this specifically and how some of the chaos that gets created in this. But this idea that the sales process is an enablement tool. It is not handcuffs. It is not cement boots. It is not a straitjacket. And if you're treating it like those things that limit the ability of the salesperson to progress a deal, you've got a problem. Now, are there times when you say, look, until you know this deal hasn't gotten past this stage? This only works with Macintosh computers. If they don't use Macs, we can't sell to them. Okay, if you don't ask that question, you're wasting everybody's time. But don't say, well, we can't move it forward. We can't write a proposal unless they confirm that they have a budget. Maybe the person that you're talking to requires a proposal to bring to the rest of the team to talk about creating a budget.
And how awesome is that? They get to create it.
So if you say we're not writing a proposal until you've done these things, what you're saying is we don't care what your buying process is. This is our sales process and you must follow it. Yeah. And we don't want to do that. What we want to do, again, is how do I help a salesperson prioritize, stay on track, make good decisions, not miss important steps? These are the things that we want our sales process to do. We want it to also give us information. If I look at this aggregate data, what do I see? If I look at the salesperson's funnel in the CRM, because they've been following this process, what do I see? How can I support? And when we stop thinking about what the salesperson has to do and start thinking about how do we enable the salesperson to successfully sell, it completely changes the conversation. It just completely changes the conversation.
And it sounds simple because it is. It's hard work. we make it more complicated because we did it this way someplace else, or I heard somebody else say that they did it this way, or so-and-so is our best salesperson and this is how they do it. Like, come on, lead people, like lead, ask questions. We've talked about this before, the role reflective model. What, so what, now what? What, so what, now what? If we ask those questions, like what's the purpose of this? What's the question? What's the question that we want to ask? What's the purpose? What's the thing that we're trying to solve? So what? If we're able to solve it, what does it mean? Why is it important? Now what? What are we going to do with it when we have the information? If we go through that, you can start to figure out, maybe there's some stuff that you've got in your process that we're talking about here that you can eliminate. Some of the tools you can eliminate, some of the questions you can eliminate, some of the questions that get repeated multiple times to validate and confirm that progress is still happening. Don't overcomplicate this stuff. And I can, there's two really, really bad sides of this. One is complete lack of process. And then the other one is over-engineered process, overcomplicated, that just kind of stifles things and ends up adding like sand into the gears of the machine that you're building through.
Yeah. And so if you go to that what, so what, and now what, and we start thinking about what is the sales process? Why do we need to have it? Like, what are we creating here? And so what? So what if I fill out all of these things in the CRM about the sales process? So what's that going to get us? And I think, the now what is, how do we create this sales process that enables success? How do we create the sales process so that the entire organization can support what sales is doing? Not how do we force the salespeople to do everything everyone else in the organization wants and needs them to do.
Yeah.
The sales doesn't do everybody's work. I think everybody thinks they should. I need to know this, and I need to know this, and I need to see this, and I need this, and marketing needs this, and accounting needs this, and ops needs this. And at some point, maybe sales doesn't need to do every single one of those things. Maybe there's a transition process where ops gets the rest of the information, or, in some organizations, there's a proposal written, and even though the customer signed off, it's still a provisional, because there's work that has to be done to ensure that it can be done that way. Are all your computers up to date? Do you have the cabling? Whatever it is that has to happen, somebody has to assess it before they can do a final with everybody signing off. But you're not going to do that second stage until you have some sort of commitment from the client. So understanding what's the process, how do we need to do it, what is sales' role in this, I think is another important part.
Yeah. And one of the cool things when you do this across an organization and you start working together is you can start to figure out, where can I bring other people in at the right time? Whether it's post-sale or it's during the parts of the sales process. How can I bring people in, and how can they gather more information? Because it just sounds more natural when someone from product is asking this question, or someone from support is asking this question, or success is asking this question. And when you do it, and this starts to get into some of the tactics of good sales, you can start trading people. So you might want access to the person who's ultimately responsible for implementing this software inside the organization. You bring your customer success person in and have them meet each other before the deal has been closed. Now, there's some risk that you take on every time you add a new layer to it, which people will say, but if you plan for it and you design for it, you could actually improve the likelihood of success, because you're introducing new people, building those relationships, and helping to ensure that the baton that gets handed off, if you're in one of those organizations where after you close a deal, it gets handed off to somebody else. When that baton gets handed off, it's handed off to somebody who already has been part of that discussion. And I've seen it happen inside organizations where people would say, well, I don't want to get customer success involved too early, because if I do, they might ask a question that hurts my deal. Or I have a technical person that comes in and they ask a question and it takes us backward. Here's the way that you solve for it. have a simple process. Communicate the stages to the people that are coming in, make sure everybody's aligned on the call plan, and highlight where the potential risk is. And you know what? You'll find out that they might actually help you move a deal faster than you were able to do on your own because they were able to talk technical to the technical people or project to the project people or whatever.
Qualify something out that you think is a good deal, but is going to create chaos on the other end that you're never going to get paid for because you didn't identify a problem.
Such an important piece. Liz, I mean, how many times have we seen that happen where stuff gets tossed over and then they go through and start doing a customer implementation and it's like, why did we sign this up? We can't do anything unless they're working on a Mac. You missed that Mac checkbox and now we're screwed. Like we've hurt our customer and we've hurt our internal team.
I literally watched a deal crumble because there were a couple of computers that couldn't update to the new operating system because they were too old and they weren't willing to replace those computers. They did the implementation and everything fell apart because nobody identified that they had those old computers, right? Yeah. So yeah, finding out what could go wrong is important and it needs to be part of the sales process.
It does.
The other thing is when you have it built into the sales process that the production team or the product team or the customer success team or whoever it is comes in at a certain point, it's easier for sales to call them in. So often we have somebody who has multiple jobs and one of their jobs is sales engineer along with everything else. And the salesperson can never get them on a meeting. They're never available. Well, if I have a sales process that is included as part of the sales process, and when these things happen, that person is notified that the next step is that they're going to have to get on a meeting. Then it's not, hey, the salesperson asked me last minute, I had no idea this was coming, blah, blah, blah. Build it into the sales process. If there's multiple people involved, get them involved, get them written in, get them notified so that there's not this problem.
Yes. The one that drives me nuts in that instance, just because I think we've got a little bit more time on this one. Liz hit it out of the park with her description right out of the front. There wasn't a lot more to add for context or color in what we're talking about here, as far as all of the things that happen in each of these stages. It's, answer those questions. What's the definition? What's the rule? What is what are some of the questions? What are the activities? How can we support? One of the challenges I ran into inside an organization a while back was we had a company that decided we're going to do no meeting Wednesdays. And the technical, the application engineer or software and sales engineer or technical person inside the organization who has to do the technical work we said no meeting Wednesday. Yeah, why'd you put this on my calendar? Well, it just happened to be the only day that the client could meet. Be careful about the expectations that you set inside your organization when you decide to roll out some new kumbaya no meeting Wednesday thing inside your business. Come on. Like if we eliminate a lot of those meetings because of no meeting Wednesdays, we might have no meeting Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because there's not going to be anything to do inside the business.
Or we have to have 2 weeks notice or a week's notice or whatever it is. And then the salesperson's like, I'm sitting here and the CEO just walked in and like, I need somebody right now. And they're like, well, you didn't give us any warning. We can't do this. I didn't have any warning. This just happened. We're going to close this deal right now. Right. And we can't do it. You didn't give us warning. It's not part of the process. And that stuff has to stop. It just has to stop.
Like, what are we here for? Yeah.
If you are customer focused, if your customer is the most important thing, why would you say no to your customer when they want to meet with you?
Yeah.
Right? Oh, I'm in product. Customer isn't the most important thing for me. It's not? That's a problem. All right. I think we've done a really good job on this. Let's wrap this segment up and join us in the next segment where we're going to talk a little bit more about the CRM and sales process alignment. And that's a wrap of this episode of the Sales SOS podcast. A huge thank you to our experts for throwing us a lifeline with their insights. We hope today's episode has equipped you to navigate the sales seas with confidence. Never miss an episode. Subscribe to the Sales SOS podcast on your favorite platform. If you have questions, comments, or topics you'd like us to explore, join us live on LinkedIn every second Friday, or share your questions on YouTube or LinkedIn. Until next time, keep sailing towards those sales goals. I'm Liz Heiman, your captain here at the Sales SOS podcast, saying smooth sailing and successful selling.